Hey, welcome back to this series of videos about how I discovered manifestation, or at least how I did not believe in manifestation until I realized that I was manifesting things in my life without knowing it. And it's not just good things, we will talk about bad things. So you might wonder what I manifested in my life without even knowing that it was manifestation. So in the previous part, I talk about what I understood from manifestation, the way that this is not magical. This is all about your brain and how you think and how words and thoughts have a power on your brain. So on your decision and how you handle things and how you see things in your life, and mostly opportunities. Without realizing it, I was lucky enough to achieve some of my dreams in my 20s, not doing that anymore, and taking the wrong path in my 30s. And because manifestation works with positive thinking, when you're aligned with yourself, you can achieve things. When you're manifesting the wrong way, so when you're sure you won't be able to do something, you probably won't be able to do something because your mind is not set to succeed. Anyways, let's start with the first example. Being younger, I didn't know what I wanted to do as an adult. Most of the time, you ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you expect this child to think about a job. First, I don't like that. I don't like to be defined by my job because I actually have multiple. So what should I say? Should I show you my resume? I don't know, but because I am not only one thing, I am so many things. I've learned so many different things on so many different subjects. So I don't know. Anyways, being younger, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Well, when I was very, very young, I wanted to be a vet because I loved animals. So it was the easiest answer. Oh, I love animals. The only job I know about taking care of animals was being a vet. Yeah, until I realized just a bit later that being a vet implied many, many years of study. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to stay in school that long. And all the things I didn't know because I was very young and I didn't exactly know what a vet was doing. I could not perform surgeries. Like, it was like, how can I do that? I cannot do that. The hardest part, probably, I don't know, I'm not a vet, but if you're a vet, please let me know. It's probably when you're helping an animal go, because I've been through that with my dog. It was heartbreaking, and I knew it was my dog, so there was this bond between us, even though she was old and I adopted her kind of at the end of her life. Yeah, I don't know. I think it would be too hard for me to just say, oh, it's your choice, but what you want to do. And just thinking about that, I knew I couldn't be a vet or any kind of doctor. I mean, performing surgeries. So this was not what I could call a dream as a child. It was the easy answer I could give when someone was asking me what I wanted to do when I was younger. But growing up a tiny bit in middle school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. The only thing I was obsessed about was Japanese culture. I grew up in the 90s with mangas and animes. These were the only things I was kind of watching. Not the only thing that I was reading, but I mean, I grew up with that. I grew up with Ghibli movies. I grew up with Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball, and Senseiya. I mean, so many other big classics. I felt something with these stories, so I was very curious about the country and the culture. And at that time, it was very difficult to find any kind of information about the country and the culture because we didn't have internet and streaming platforms. I mean, that makes sense. And in the 90s, YouTube did not even exist. So we only had the library. And I can tell you, there was not a lot of things about Japan in the library. Anyways, we're going to talk about Japan in the next part. But I need to explain this obsession about Japan before I talk about my studies. So the only thing I knew, and I knew deep down at my core, that I wanted to discover Japan. I wanted to travel there and probably, maybe, live there at some point, even though I didn't know anything about the country. And it was in the 90s. So 30 years ago. And everything has changed in Japan as well as in the whole world. So at the end of middle school, we had to choose options for high school. So we had 3 options at that time because in 30 years, many things have changed. And we had economics, literature, and science. I chose science because I was pretty good at everything, but economics did not really interest me. Literature was interesting in a way. I was good in French, in English, Spanish. I just didn't want to do philosophy. I don't want to do that. So I chose science because why not? I mean, I did love science and math, and I had very good grades in science and math, so it made sense in a way that I would choose science engineering, which I didn't do because before the end of the last year of middle school, we call that in France, it's the third grade, which is absolutely not third grade for any English speaker here. This is not the same. I don't remember. So I'm going to tell you the last year of middle school. So I was around 10, 11. My mom got married to my stepfather and she had a dress made by a seamstress. And I was like, oh my gosh, I finally found what I wanted to do. Bear with me. We're getting to the point of manifestation. Another thing you need to understand about my childhood, which is pretty similar to other people growing up in the 90s, was I grew up with Disney movies, with princesses movies, with Cece, this TV show. I loved it. And when I was very young, I had this very silly dream. And you'll see, I had very silly dreams, but they turned out to be not so silly once being an adult and achieving them. I wanted to be a princess. I didn't want a title. I didn't want the prince. I didn't want the responsibilities. I only wanted the dresses. I told you it was silly. So you see where I'm getting there? Wedding gowns are princesses' dresses. So I thought, if I learn how to do that, I'll be able to make myself princesses' dresses, which are what we call fantasy gowns now. Because, yes, it is a thing now. So I decided to study made-to-measure fashion for 3 years in high school. It was a technical high school. And then 1 year hand embroidery. Except that I had no plan. I wanted to learn how to make dresses, but I didn't know what I would do exactly. And at that time, the only job I could think about, because this was the only job I knew, was to be a fashion designer. But everyone wants to be a fashion designer when starting fashion studies, except that there are more than just being a fashion designer in the whole industry. But we didn't know that at that time. We only knew about fashion designer. So I thought that would be an option because a fashion designer can travel. So maybe someday I'll be able to go to Japan thanks to my job, which did not happen. I mean, it did not happen with my job, and we'll talk about how I went to Japan, but not with my job. So since the very day I started learning made-to-measure fashion until today, it's been the I was 14. 23 years? Oh my gosh, it's been 23 years since I've started learning made-to-measure designs. Oh my gosh. That's so long ago. So yeah, 23 years. And during that 23 years, I've worked in costume industry, in luxury industry, and I also made a lot of things for myself. So I had no plan except thinking that as a fashion designer, I could travel to Japan and the world, by the way, because why not? Which did not happen. Okay, I did my 3 years and then another year in hand embroidery. But I realized very early on that I was not made to work in the fashion industry, because what I wanted to do was to create my own designs and not to work for someone else. Yeah, I know. But if I wanted to do my own design and wanted to make a living out of it, I had to sell my design. I mean, that was the logical thing to do, right? Well, I knew that it would be very hard. First, because not a lot of people nowadays can afford buying a made-to-measure piece, because it's a lot of work and it's very expensive. And when I got out of school, I definitely didn't have the skills that I have 20 years later. And I didn't have the tools too, like no social media, for example. So what to do with these 2 degrees if I don't work in the industry anymore, but I'll still want to create designs? Well, I've been cosplaying for quite some time, but I didn't make a living out of it. But I was happy to do that anyway. Now I've stopped cosplaying because I don't have time anymore. I'm getting older too, even though I still love going to convention, and I still love the feeling of going there, meeting people. I mean, I love that. But I still don't want to create designs for other people because they would be too expensive. Like, very, very expensive. I told you, very few people would be able to afford that. And I don't want to battle to sell my designs. I want to be able to create them and wear them and be a princess at 37. I have found a way to do that. I still have not yet shown that to the world. I'm working on that. So what's the story about manifestation here? It could be a coincidence that my mom got married and decided to choose this shop and work with a seamstress and not buy a dress already made. I would had never met her employee who told me about the studies, the degree I have, which does not exist anymore. As a teenager, I kind of put on the side the fact that I wanted to become a princess when I was a very young girl. But I always loved dressing up, even though I was growing up. That's why cosplay made so much sense when I got out of school with my degree. I was like, oh gosh, cosplay exists. I didn't know it existed before. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do that. I have to do that because I can create costume from characters that I do love, especially in mangas and animes, and wear that in convention. I was like, that was mind-blowing. That was something that was very dear to me as a young girl, even though I had no idea how I would end up wearing this kind of gown someday. And it was not about wishing very hard that I could do that. It was deep down knowing that it was something that I wanted to do. So when I got the opportunity to do that, I did not think about the career. I did not think about the money. Obviously, I thought about probably going to Japan. So that is a completely different story, although it's very linked to this one. But I did not tell myself that I could not do it. There was no point, that I would not be good at it, that I would not find a job or anything like that. Once I knew I could learn how to make dresses, I went for it. I went for it very hard. Like, my head teacher at that time didn't want me to choose this kind of studies because they were technical studies and I was too good at school to do technical studies. Like, remember, I was supposed to study science engineering. So what would I become a seamstress? Yeah, I am very proud that I chose to become a seamstress. I could have been a very great engineer. I don't know. But I'm proud that I believed in that dream and just went for it. And yes, you might think it's a coincidence. I know. And you might think that there's nothing to do with manifestation. But at that time, I didn't think that I could not do it. I was like, I'm going to make it. And I'm not going to make it as a fashion designer. I'm going to learn how to make dresses, and I'm going to make dresses for myself, and I'm going to wear those dresses. And then after that, I discovered cosplay, and I kept cosplaying for years. So in a way, because I didn't put away that dream, and deep down, I kept believing that it was a possibility, now I can be a princess. I can be queen, I can be goddess, I can be whatever I want. I can also be a mermaid, but I would not make that. I would buy that. So what do you understand from this story, whether it can be called manifestation or not, it's just that because I didn't doubt myself and I didn't overthink about the future and my career and whether I would manage to find a job or not, all this kind of thing that we think about as an adult, I went for it. And even though I did not work in the industry anymore, I did not make a living out of it the way we think we can make a living out of it, I have no regret. I do not regret doing those studies because I made my dream come true. And I do hope that in the near future, I'll be able to show you all my work, because for now, my life is a bit messy. If you followed a bit the story on the previous video, I talked very quickly about the state I was last year. So it's very messy right now, but I do want to go back to creating more gowns and designs. I know I'll do that at some point. It's not that I wish, I know that I'll go back to it because that's something that deep down, it is part of me since so many years. Obviously, I'll never be a real princess with the title and everything, because I'm not looking for a prince to marry. And I told you, I'm not looking for the title, don't want the huge responsibilities. I'm okay with just wearing the very pretty dress. I told you it was silly at the beginning, but now I'm not afraid to say that I'm wearing pretty dresses, like princesses' dresses, and that I make them. Because most of the time when people ask me, oh, what do you do? And I'm just like, it depends, but mostly I'm a fantasy gown designer. But the easiest way for them to understand what I'm doing is like, oh, I'm a seamstress. And you can be a seamstress and not making huge pieces, very expensive one like I do or other great designers do. It's completely fine, but most of people don't understand exactly what I do, so I need to show them, and once I show them, they're like, oh, yes, oh. So yeah, it's not just sewing, I'm not just a seamstress, even though no hatred to any seamstress, and it's okay to be just a seamstress, because being a seamstress is having skills, okay? There's nothing wrong about that. So I did not manifest it to be a fashion designer, a fantasy gown designer, costume designer. I manifested to become a princess. And now I can be a princess whenever I want, because I did not forget about my dream. So yeah, let's move on to the next part. So I'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, take care of you. Bye-bye.